Good evening, everyone. Welcome. My name is Joe Davich, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Georgia Center for the Book. And on behalf of the Georgia Center for the Book, DeKalb County Public Library, and the DeKalb Library Foundation, welcome to another in our continuing series of virtual author events. We are so very pleased and honored this evening to have our guests here who are not only Olympic medal winning champions, but they are also Georgians. Right now, of course, I'd like to give you a few tips just before we begin the program. If you would like to ask a question after the formal presentation, please feel free to go ahead and do so by using the Q&A feature that you'll find at the top or the bottom of your screen. Also, we've enabled live transcription for our hearing impaired guests this evening. If you need that service, you can locate the CC button at the top or the bottom of your device, and you can resize the font to however large you desire it to be. If you would like to purchase a copy of the book, Tigerbelle, the Wyomia Tyus story, our bookseller this evening is Brave and Kind Books. Brave and Kind Books is an independent bookstore here in Decatur, Georgia. They are Black owned and mom operated, and we couldn't be happier to partner not only with an independent bookstore, but with a Black owned independent business. Also this week, we have some very exciting events coming up, including the book Chasing Me to My Grave, The Life of Winfred Rembert. It will be featuring Aaron I. Kelly, Patsy Rembert, and will be moderated by Pinnell Joseph. Also, we are featuring an event with 7 Stages Atlanta for the Big Read again this year. The program is called The Art of Activism. And of course, we will be discussing the book of poetry, American Sunrise by U.S. Poet Laureate Joy Harjo. You can find all of those events on Eventbrite or by going to our Facebook page or georgiacenterforthebook.org. Right now, I would like to introduce our guest this evening. Wyomia Tyus was born and raised in Griffin, Georgia. She attended Tennessee State University in Nashville and ran under the tutelage of visionary coach Ed Temple as a member of the Tigerbelles until she graduated in 1968. A 4-time Olympic medalist and the holder of multiple world titles, Tyus was also a supporter of the Olympic Project for Human Rights during the 1968 Olympics, doing her part to promote justice for oppressed people around the world. As a founding member of the Women's Sports Foundation, she continues to advocate for women's equality in sports to this day. Elizabeth Terzakis teaches English and creative writing at a community college in Northern California. Her fiction has appeared in the New England Review, Minerva Rising, Solstice, Birdland Journal, and her nonfiction publication include articles on the global AIDS crisis, education, free speech, human nature, capital punishment, and Tigerbelle is also her first book. I have to tell you that this is going to be an amazing presentation this evening. This is such an inspirational story about athleticism, achievement, and activism, and we are so pleased to have our guest this evening. But before we start this evening's presentation, we're going to show you a clip from the 1968 Olympic Games. If you're watching the replay of this video, you can find the link down below. Feel free to pause, watch the video in the link, and then return to the chat. So give us one moment, and we're going to show you Wyomia Tyus winning her gold medal in 1968. Once again, thank you so very much for joining us this evening. And right now, I would like to go ahead and have us all welcome Wyomia Tyus and Elizabeth Terzakis. Wyomia, Elizabeth.
Hello.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Thank you.
I have to say I love watching that video. So thank you very much for starting the program with that. It always puts a smile on my face. And I think I probably watched it about 100 times while I was writing the book. So while we were putting the book together. So thank you for that very much. So it's good to see you too, Wyomia. I don't see you often enough in these pandemic times.
It's going to get to the point we can soon.
Yeah, hopefully soon. So let's just start at the beginning. As Joe mentioned, you did grow up in Griffin, Georgia, and you grew up during the time of Jim Crow. Do you want to talk a little bit about what that was like, how it was to be a child?
I grew up on a dairy farm, and we didn't own the farm. My dad worked the farm, and both my parents worked. My dad worked at the dairy, and my mom worked at the dry cleaners. And I grew up with 3 older brothers, and I grew up in the 50s, in the 50s in Georgia. Growing up on a dairy farm was a lot of fun. And for me, anyway, I enjoyed it tremendously because I got an opportunity to really be around my father and be around him. And the property in which we lived on, it was huge, big. And every weekend we would go for a walk in the woods. And that was the most fun thing and the best thing I feel in my life, and to be able to walk with my father in the woods with my brother. And also there was also sometimes a cousin walking with us, and just being there. And yes, there were a lot of things, the whole Jim Crow era, and a lot of unrest going on. And my mom and dad really tried to keep us safe, so to speak. They tried to make a safe place for us. And when I say safe, they definitely taught us what was going on and let us know what the whole Jim Crow issue was, and how we were not allowed. Because I grew up with, you go into a store, it's white water, one says white and one says black, and colored, I should say. And so I grew up with that. And my father used to say to us all the time, you shouldn't want to be around people that don't want to be around you. And but you need to know what your surroundings are and how people feel about you. So for us, I'll speak for myself, it was just the fact of being with my parents and being with my brothers and being able to do the things that we wanted to do. We played a lot of sports, and I can't talk enough about the whole walking in the woods. It just was so meaningful for me, and I think it shaped my life quite a bit.
Yeah, and so you were always athletic, but what was it that actually made you start to run competitively? What made that decision for you to join the track team at your high school?
Well, my father passed away, and when I was just walking, it devastated me. I must say that. And in the year before he passed away, our house burned down, the house in which we were living in, and we had lost everything. And the fact that to see my father, he really struggled with that. He just never got over the fact that we lost everything. He would always say, all these things I was saving for you guys, for you when you get to be older, you have these things. And it was never, and he couldn't give it to us. So he just lost, he was never the same person. And within a year, he passed away. And I was just, between that and losing the house and my dad dying, I was just having a rough time. I just withdrew into myself, didn't talk very much. Not that I was a talker anyway, but I would just say, one word answers and things like that. And my mom kept saying, well, you can't continue to be like this. And it was just not getting any better. And she would say, well, your father would not want this. So it kind of spurred me on. So it was like, I've always played with boys growing up. I played with my brothers and the boys that lived in the neighborhood, and the neighborhood in which we lived in Griffin at the farm, it was all white. We were the only black family in the area. So, and the white girls were not allowed to play with us. So we always played with the boys, and I always had to be good. I always had to be able to hold my own, or be able, and because it was like, girls are not supposed to play football. Girls are not supposed to play with boys, and we don't want a girl on our team. And my father would never hear that. My father used to tell my brother, you let her play. You let her. She's just as good as you guys, if not better. So I had a early dosage of being an athlete, of knowing how it works. And I played basketball, and we played everything, football, basketball, you name it. We rode our bicycles, who could be the fastest, we climbed trees, who could climb a tree fast. And I always wanted to do that. So, but after my father passed away, I just didn't have a desire to do those things. And once my mother started talking to me about the fact that your dad wouldn't like this, I decided to just go out and play. They only had basketball for women and track. And then at the time basketball for women, they didn't think we could run up and down the full court. They had us play half court, meaning you had 6 guards on one side and 3 guards on one side and 3 forwards on the other side. You can only dribble the ball twice and pass it off. And it was kind of hard for me because I was used to playing with my brothers and we were dribbling everywhere. So after so I played basketball, and then after the basketball season, they got track. And so I went out for that, and it's just started right there. I mean, I just did it just to be doing something. So my mom wouldn't see me moping around the house, and, she wanted me to do better and think about, doing something different. So.
And then the big moment came though, when you just happened to start running track to sort of lift you out of your depression. And then you just happened to qualify for a state meet. And that was where you met Mr. Temple. Do you want to talk a little bit about him and his program and why he was important to you?
Well, I met Mr. Temple at a good time.
I can't hear you, Wyomia. Can you lean in? Sorry.
I was saying I met Mr. Temple at a good time in my life. And because, as I stated before, my father passed away, and I was in a depression and all that. And so Mr. Temple became like a second father to me. And I was in Fort Valley, Georgia, where we had track meets, and Mr. Temple saw me competing in a meet, and after the meet, he came up and said to me, he called everybody by their last name, and he introduced himself as Coach Temple from Tennessee State. And he says, Tyus? And I said, yes. And he says, well, you look pretty good out there, but I think you could do better if you had some more training. I said, okay. He said, well, I have a summer program where I train junior high and high school girls in the summer. You come for a month and I train you in track. Would you be interested in that? And I said, yeah, it sounds good. And he said, well, you'll hear from me. And I was like, okay. And I went on about my business, and he went on about his business. And about 2 weeks later, my mom got a letter in the mail saying that he was coming to visit. And I'm like, coming to visit us? And he said, yes, that's something he did. He went to every young girl's, if they came for the summer program, he went to their homes to speak to their family, their mom, their dad, or whoever they were living with. He'd come in, he would talk to us. And he came and visited, and he came in, and I sat on the floor, and he and my mom was sitting on the couch, and he's running down his program, all the things he wants, what he'd expect from us as women and all that. And it was like, after he finished doing this for about an hour, he asked me, well, what do you think? Are you interested? I said, I think so. And and he says, I said, well, it depends on my mom, what she says. She said, well, if that's something you want to do, you could do that. And he said, okay, then you're going to hear from me again, and we're going to come up in June, and we will do that. And I said, okay. And then after he left, I'm worried and not saying anything to my mom, because I just know that she can't afford to send me to Nashville. And, it was just no money for us. It's just, it was just enough to live on for us. And she just didn't say anything. And I just thought, this is never going to happen. I'm not going to be able to go. And my high school, Fairmount High School in Griffin, raised the money for me to go. They raised all of $23, which was a big sum of money at that time, to get me a train ticket, round trip to Nashville, back to Atlanta. Well, to Atlanta and then to Griffin. But so that started my career with Mr. Temple, and it was something, that whole trip. I mean, you think about it, I'm on a train riding about is 6 hours from Atlanta to Nashville on the train by myself. And one of my mom's friends said to me, well, you get on that train and you sit there and you sit with dignity. I was, and don't talk to anyone. And I'm like, you won't have any problem with that. I won't talk to anyone. But so that changed my life right there. And Mr. Temple had said, well, I'll meet you at the train station, Tyus. And I said, okay. And when I got there, there he was. He was there and he had a person with him, a young woman that ran track there at Tennessee State. And he says, Tyus, this is Rudolph. I said, oh, hi, how you doing? And we get in the car and he and this person, Rudolph, we talking about Wilma Rudolph. I didn't know who Wilma Rudolph was. I knew nothing about the Olympics or either track or, I mean, I just did sports because I like it. And we were in the car and between Mr. Temple and Wilma, they talked the whole time. I sat in the back and I kept thinking, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into? They talk too much. They're gonna want me to talk. They're gonna talk too much. And he's, you know, we get to the campus, Tennessee State campus, and he says that, well, you go up there and you get your good night's sleep because you have practice at 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, 5 o'clock? He said, yes. You have a 5 o'clock practice, you have a 9 o'clock practice, and you have a 1 o'clock practice. So this is all in the summer at Tennessee State, hot Tennessee in Nashville, Tennessee. So it was something to be reckoned with. I mean, 5 o'clock was nothing for me. I grew up on a farm, so getting up early, my moms would just say all the time to us when we would sleep past 6 o'clock. Well, you have more time to sleep than stay awake. So you need to wake up, get up out of bed and get your life going. And being at Tennessee that summer, it was something to talk about. I mean, I was not the only person there. And he said, oh, when you get upstairs, you'll meet your new roommates. I said, roommates? I didn't sign up for someone. I had to be in the room with someone. Well, I met some good friends and that was really great. And it was about 20 young women that were there for the summer program. And we all got up and went to practice at 5, went to 9, went to 1. And they were hard practices. And they were, I mean, to the point where a lot of young girls went home because they couldn't handle it. And I wanted to be one of those young girls to go home. And it was more like I was just practicing maybe once or twice a week. And here it is, we're practicing 3 times a day. And I was not getting any faster. Matter of fact, everybody was beating me. I just thought, this is not working for me. So I decided to do like some of the other young women on the team that was there. I decided to call my mom and tell her, I can't do this. This is too hard for me. This man is crazy. He has us practicing all these times and I'm not getting any faster. I'm getting beat every day. I want to come home. And she says, well, you can't come home because you said you wanted to go. And you don't have to go next year, but you have to finish out this year. And I think that was the best thing that could have happened to me, that changed my life, that made me not only just want to be good for that summer, but it made me start thinking about what I really want to do in life later on. Yeah.
Yeah, and you've talked a bit about how rigorous Mr. Temple's athletic program was. How was he about education? Was he, you know, was it okay if you blew off your classes to do your athletics, or was there a different regimen imposed on that?
That was totally a different regimen. And Mr. Temple, he was more like education. One of the things he's always said, he said, look, you know, your sport or your track would open the door for you, but education would keep the door open. And he believed in everybody getting an education. I mean, you're talking about all the girls. He has a 98% graduation rate from Tennessee State of the girls that hung in there, stayed in there, they all graduated. And those that did not, they went on to another school and got their education. So he was really on top, stickler for the fact that you have to need your education. And so you can learn a whole lot from this, and you'll never know where you're going to be. And one thing I always said too was that it doesn't, you don't have to have track friends. You know, you don't have to have friends, all of them have to be in sports. You need to have all different kinds of friends so you can learn about things and learn how people live. And he was just very into making us as young women, young girls, into young women and older women, and understanding where we were, and to think about we're talking about living in Tennessee. We're talking about women weren't in school when you think about it. I mean, there were very few, I think, what is it? I've forgotten the percentage
It's
of women.
the year that you got your bachelor's degree, 8% of American women, period. So not Black American women, but American women, period, got a bachelor's degree. So it was very rare for women to get four-year college degrees, you know, and they didn't have to deal with Jim Crow and the other like oppressions that were also heaped on Black women. So,
yeah, and Mr. Temple made sure, I mean, he worked with all of us. One thing I've always, and I still to this day marvel at the fact, how did he know? How could you choose me to come for that summer? Why did you choose me? Because there were so many other young women I felt that was just as good. And how did, what was it about me that really stood out? I still don't know to this day, but I'm glad it did stand out, and I'm glad that I got an opportunity to go there. And just the mere fact, when I went to Tennessee State, to see the young women that were in college that was on a track team was another thing to me. I was like, I mean, one of the women that was on the team was a math major, and she was talking about, she wanted to learn about going to space and learn about, and I am like, math major? I've always had a male math teacher. I didn't know anything about a female teacher. And, you know, he made us believe that we could do anything. All we had to do is really work very hard, keep our grades up, be comfortable in who we are, know who you are, and always thinking of what you want to do, how you want to do it. And he would always say, you know, just don't be blurting out things. When you speak, think about it first, and then you say whatever you need to say. But you need to be sure of yourself. So whatever you speak on, you have to be proud of what you're talking about. And he did that with all these young women. And I just, you know, I think about it, you look at it now, and at a time in the Jim Crow time, that was just not happening. And you're talking about all Black women. You're talking about putting all these women on an Olympic team. He put over 40 women on Olympic teams. And he had international people. He had people from Panama, he had people from Jamaica, people from Bermuda, you name it. And he had an international team. And he put all these people on an Olympic team. Not only did they go to the Olympics, they won like 23 medals, 13 of them gold. I mean, name a school that has done that. No male school, nobody in track, nobody in basketball. But Mr. Temple did this at a time when it was unheard of. And it was not so much he was complaining or anything about the publicity. What his publicity was, that I want you to get an education. And that would be good enough for me. You get your education. And not only did we just get a college education, we got a worldly education. We got to travel all over the world. We got to see places that I never thought. I mean, I got to go to Japan. I got to go to Russia. I got, you know, and all because I had a talent to run. But, you know, that was just amazing to me to be able to do those things.
That's a really good segue into my next question, because in 1964, you know, Coach Temple believed in you and he wanted you to believe in himself, but it was not clear the whole time that you were going to qualify for the Olympics or win a medal there. So I both would love it if you would just talk about what it was like to go to Tokyo, and like what most impressed you about being in that country as opposed to in the United States. And then, you know, you eventually did win your first gold in the 100 meters there, although it was not expected that you would. If you could talk a little bit about that and about the wonderful Edith McGuire, your close friend and 100-meter rival, that would be great.
Well, 64, you know, Mr. Temple kept saying to me, well, Tyus, we're not expecting great things from you in 64. what he liked to do, Mr. Temple always wanted to bring each girl along very slowly. He also wanted you to be mentally capable with dealing with something that grand, and he wanted to bring you along slowly. He also would have the Tigerbelles, the older Tigerbelles, help out the younger Tigerbelles, and teach them the ropes, so to speak, teach them things, how to do certain things and how to act, how to dress and all those things. So he was very concerned about who we were as women, and he wanted us to always make a great impression. And so 64, he just said, Tyus, you're so young. I mean, I was 18. I mean, I made the team when I was 18. By the time the Olympics, I turned 19. He said, you're young. We don't expect wonderful things from you. It's great that you made the team. People try all their lives sometimes, and they can't make an Olympic team, and you did it the first time out. In the Olympics, in track and field, if they take the top 3 people in each event, I got third in 100 meters. So I barely made the team. But he said, that's okay. You made the team and you're there, you're going. And Mr. Temple was the coach of the women's team in 1964. So and they were looking to Edith, my best friend, to win 3 gold medals in Tokyo, just as Wilma had done 4 years prior. So you're thinking, yeah, Wilma, and not only that, just the mere fact that in 1960, you had Wilma winning 3 gold medals, and you had the whole relay team, women's relay team in 1960, all from Tennessee State, all the women. But going back to Edith and I met each other at Tennessee State. Edith's from Atlanta, so I met her when the first summer I was there. I mean, I'd seen Edith from afar, from behind, because we used to run into meets in Georgia together. Well, at least one of the meets. And everybody would always talk about how a great runner she was, and she is, and she was. And so Edith was picked to win. And when we went to Tokyo, I mean, for me, the whole plane ride was just amazing, to be on a plane that long. And then when we arrived in Tokyo, I can remember it was nightfall, and I was glued to the window, just looking out, because the beautiful lights are just so gorgeous. I've never seen anything that pretty before. And then once we get landed and got our luggage and all, and it was like to go through the city, it was like so many people. I'd never seen so many. I mean, I grew up in Griffin, Georgia, where you only had blacks and white. That's all I knew, black and white. I didn't know anything about any other culture. So 64 was a learning lesson for me. I learned so much, not just about myself, but about other people, not just the people in Tokyo, but also we lived in the Olympic Village. You got an opportunity to see all the other different countries, people from different countries speaking different languages, something I never heard before. And just the idea, and then you had opportunity to go to the different dining halls to eat if you want to eat the different foods of the different countries. So it was such a big growth period for me. I learned so much about what I thought I would like to do. I was just so in awe of everything that was going on. So, and I wasn't even worried about my race, because it was more like, oh, Mr. Temple said 1968 will be my year, so I'm just here to have fun. So I was out there just having great fun and enjoying my time there. And I remember when it was time for the 100 meters, we ran the first heat. And I won that heat, and I think we had to run 4 heats. I'm not sure. Anyway, I won each one of my heats. And so when it was time for the finals, Mr. Temple came up to the workout field, because he's a coach. And he said, Tyus, I want to talk to you. I said, okay. And he says, I just want to tell you, you look good out there. I'm very proud of you, but 68, we're grooming you for 68, but you still look really good. And I think if you continue to run that way, you might win a medal. And I said, okay, thank you, Mr. Temple. And he went off. And then as he went off, I just started thinking, oh, I could win this. Then I started thinking, oh no, I shouldn't think like that. Because one thing Mr. Temple would always say to us, he didn't want us to get the big head, you know, thinking, I could do these things. I'm saying, oh, I should not be thinking that way. And he went and talked to Edith, and Edith said, Edie had gotten a second in one of her races, and he was like trying to talk to her. She just ran away from him. She didn't want to talk to him about that. And when we went to the finals of the 100, Edith was next to me, and the other American, Marilyn White, was next to her. So we were in lane 7, 6, 7, and 8, and I was in 6. So the gun goes off, and I'm running, and I'm like, I mean, you're not thinking, you don't think you can think during that time. You're talking 11 seconds or a little bit more. And I'm running, and I'm like, I get to around 80 meters, and I'm like, okay, Edith usually catching me at this time. Where is she? And I just kept thinking what Mr. Temple always said, you don't need to look around. You don't need to, you look one way, somebody pass you another way. Don't worry, they'll be there. You're coming for you. So you always just, and all I started thinking was, stay relaxed, lift your knees, lean at the tape, do all the things that you've been doing all that's, you know, all this time. And, you know, I guess about 90 meters out, and I said, I could hear Edith. I always tease her. I said, I could hear you breathing. I could hear you coming. And we get to the finish line, and I think she's very close on me. So she runs up to me and after the 100 and says, Tyus, you won. And I said, I did? Because I thought she had nipped me at the tape like always. So I never thought I had won it. So, but, you know, it never really affected our relationship. People always talk to us about, how do you get to be such good friends and y'all compete? Well, that's, you know, you can compete against your best friend. You can compete against anybody. It's just the respect for each other and the care and what you think of each other. And that's, you know, Edith and I have been friends since I was 15 and she was 16. So that's a long time, you know. So, and then, you know, you give respect to each other.
Awesome. So then 4 years later, it was your year, 1968, and you had to do it again. But there was a lot of other stuff going on there too, right? There were all these Black athletes in California talking about boycotting the Olympics. There was the Olympic Project for Human Rights. So it'd be great if you could talk a little bit about sort of the political context, like what made you interested in the organizing that was going on, what kept you from being super involved in the organizing that was going on before the Olympics, and then what you decided to do when you got there.
Well, 68, well, the 60s were a lot of going on, not just in America, but throughout the world, a lot of unrest. And what was happening for what Black athletes had just some Black athletes that decided that they would not go. We were going to boycott the Olympics, we're going to do all those things. But these were the men that were talking, saying that's just going to happen. And they never, ever talked to us as women. They never asked us what we wanted to do, how do we feel about it. And it was just like, hey, if we say it, you're going to do it. That's how I felt they were treating us. So, you know, reporters would call Mr. Temple, because it's not like we have the cell phones and things like people have now, but they would call him and say, they're talking about this in California, they're not going to the games. What are your girls going to do? And Mr. Temple said, well, they can't do anything. You can't go, you know, are they going to boycott? He said, well, I can't say that they are, because first you got to make the team. In order to boycott the team, you have to first make it. So we're working on making a team. So, and not only that, no one has talked to us. No one has come to ask, you know, ask the girls here at Tennessee State if they how they felt about it or anything like that. So we were not included as women, not just not the women from Tennessee State, but all the women that were on it, that was part of the track team in 68. So it got to be, they were saying it was a black boycott, and then it got to be a human rights project, which it was all along. I felt it was all about the unrest that was happening here in the U.S., stuff that was happening in South Africa, and then we get to Mexico City, the things that happened to the students there being killed, all those kinds of things was just going on. And when we get to Mexico City, we still had not, as a group, decided what we could do to protest, so to speak. And there were a lot of meetings at the Olympic Village, and it got to the point that nobody knew what they were going to do, what we could do as a team, because nobody could agree. We all could do this. Then it was just left up to the athletes themselves. Whatever you would like to do, whatever you want to do to show your protest, show your stance. So, and that's how it was left. And you know, the 100 meters, Tokyo, I mean, Mexico City was a big time for me because what I wanted to do in 1968, I wanted to graduate from college, which I did, and then go to the Olympic Games and win the 100 meters again, which I did. And I was, for me, the Olympics was, that's what I was going to do, but I didn't know about what I would do as a protest, what I would do to show my solidarity, to what I felt about human rights, and growing up the way I did in the Jim Crow South, and also being told as a woman that you're not supposed to have muscles because they're ugly, and no man is going to want you. All these things that were, it was not just my color, it was also because I was a woman. All these things were happening, and I just didn't know what I would do. So I decided for the 100 meters, when in my races, I just decided to wear my protest. I would wear my black shorts, and I wore my black shorts in the 100, and I went on to win.
Black shorts being not the team uniform, which was strictly enforced, right? You could even have like a little button on without
So true. That's right, because there were buttons that said the Human Rights Project, and they didn't want us wearing it. You're not allowed to do it. You're supposed to stay in uniform at all times. But I did not. I wore my black shorts. And to let you know how much they thought about women, no one said one word to me. No one said anything to me about me wearing my black shorts and not being in uniform or anything like that. So, I ran my, I won back-to-back 100 meters, which had never been done before. I was the first person to ever do that. And I did my protest about wearing my black shorts. And, when you get to the press room and you get interviewed and all of that, you wonder, no one ever talked to me about being out of uniform. No one said anything. And that's just to me, it just lets you know what they think of women, especially Black women. They, learn to just total overlook me, so to speak. And then, 3 days later, I think it was 3 or 2 days later, Tommy Smith and John Carlos did the Black Fist on the victory stand, and it's just everybody went completely crazy about that. And even to this day, that's the first thing. That's all they talk about is what happened. But a lot of athletes, not just Black athletes, did protests and did things to show their solidarity for the Human Rights Project. But they only talked about that. But, people say, well, it was because after Carlos and Smith did what they did on the victory stand, that's why they didn't. I said, well, I ran first. I did it first. That was the first, so, but, that I didn't do it for PR. I didn't do it. I did it because who I stand for, what I stand for, what I see that was wrong, what I see that needs to be changed. And if this is something, if it's nothing else, if one person saw it and it influenced them, if one woman, one young girl saw the fact, hey, she did stay in uniform, then that's something I can make a stand. And, not only did she stay in uniform, she also went on to break world records. She went on to win back-to-back medals, and nobody else has done this. And this is showing younger women how powerful they can be.
And you also dedicated your second gold medal of that Olympics to Tommie Smith and John Carlos at a time when they were, really under the gun. So I think it's, that's also an important gesture of solidarity that also didn't get noticed. And I know that one of the things that we often talk about is like, what is going to have to change in the world for the protest of women athletes to get the same attention that the protest of male athletes gets. And I'm going to use that as a segue into our last topic, which is sort of what's going on with women in sports and the struggle for equal rights and human rights in the world today. What are you paying attention to? What do you think is like sort of either the most important accomplishments, the changes that have happened, for example, for Black women in sports, and what are the struggles that are ahead of us that sort of need more people to fight?
Well, we do need more people to fight because I think that we're stronger in numbers, number one. And number two is that, you look at how far women has come from the time I was competing when they say you're not supposed to be good at what you do. You just go out there and play. And they would say, don't sweat, women don't sweat, and all those kinds of things. And things have changed. I remember being a part of the founding members of the Women's Sports Foundation. One thing we would talk with, all of what really kind of brought this together. We were at an event what they used to have for the women called the Women's Superstars, and we were all sitting around talking, and each day we would have different groups of people, just whoever you felt comfortable sitting around talking with, and we all found that we had some of the same things in common when we would go to different banquets, that banquet circuit they put you on, and you have women, you sit at a table with 12 of, not just women, but companies that are bought a table, and you have women and men there, and women would come up and say, gosh, I wish I could have done what you did. I wish someone would have helped me. Someone would have made me feel like I could do this. And I really don't want this to happen to my daughter. I want things to change. And this is pretty much how the Women's Sports Foundation started. We started talking because we all saw from every sport, not just from track. We're talking like Billie Jean King. We're talking about Susie Chaffee, we're talking about Sheila Young, we're talking about Mickey King Hogue, all the different sports. And they were talking, we were all sharing pretty much the same story when we talk about to other women, and this is what my mothers were saying to us, and how we could do something to change. And this is what we came up with with the Women's Sports Foundation. I think too, a lot has changed with the Title IX. A lot of things have changed, good things, and good things for women. And on the other hand, people would say sometimes it's not so good because there are women, especially like with Mr. Temple's program. Now, every college, major college or university is giving some type of athletic scholarship to women, which is great. But Mr. Temple was the Tennessee State at one time was the only school that was doing that. And you're talking way back in the 50s, that the only school that was giving any type of athletic scholarship to women. And they were really not a scholarship as work aid, but still you would get assistance, you were getting help. But now every major college and university, because of Title IX, required to do something for women just as if they would do for men. So these kinds of things are things that I have always been, something I've always wanted, I always fought for. And you can see a lot of different ones. Now you have, it used to be, you think about Black women and just in track maybe, but now they're in all sports. And it's not just Black women, we have so many people of color that is participating in all sports. And this is what the world is all about. It's not, we all have to look around and see. If I had never had the opportunity, I would not be here talking today. And I'm just thankful that I could, and hopefully in my days of running and competing and talking about what has happened to me, it has changed people, and people are looking at the fact that women can do anything. They've always been, what I like to say, stay in the fight. They've always been in the fight, and they've always been fighting, and you're fighting, and I'm not talking about physical fighting, you're fighting for who you are, what you believe in. And to me, that's what staying in the fight about. And I think young women are doing that, and we are seeing it, especially anywhere from ice skating, you name it. I can't think of all the sports.
Gymnastics, swimming.
Yes,
Yeah.
all of that. And you have all these people of different ethnicities here competing, and this is what the world is about. You have all this mixture, and to me, all that could happen is it makes it for a better place to live for each and every one of us, no matter who you are.
Okay. Thanks so much, Wyomia. As always, it's so good to talk to you. I think that the organizers were going to open up the program to questions now.
Yes, if anyone has any questions for Elizabeth or Wyomia, please go ahead and type those in the Q&A and we can ask them. Or if you'd like to type them into the chat and we can make sure that we see those as well. And we have had a few people checking in, like JP, who said he is a TSU alumni. And it sounded just like Coach Temple. And that you all set the standard for Tigerbelles to come. I believe that's when you were talking about riding with Wilma Rudolph in the car. So just a literary question. What was it like working on this book together as a pair? How much of it was just listening, and then how much was trying to put it together, sort of like organize it in a book form that kind of like took you on this journey as well? But still, and I'm gonna have to say, because I've been gushing for a while, it's like it's still very filled with joy at the same time. I mean, like, you can literally see Wyomia smile in these pages. It's great.
Can I start that, Wyomia?
Sure, I was going to say you should.
Okay. So Wyomia and I met on April 3rd of 2016. We were introduced by Dave Zirin, who writes a column called Edge of Sports and runs the imprint for Akashic Books, which is the publishing company that published the book. And he invited me to an event at California State University, East Bay. And I had no idea what it was for. And I had a very long commute from work, and I was very grumpy when I arrived, I remember. And I was kind of like, why am I here? Like, what am I doing here? I used to edit his books. And so I thought maybe he wanted me to do some work for him. And so the program starts, and it's John Carlos and Dave Zirin and Wyomia Tyus. And I had never heard of her before. I didn't know who she was. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening to her talk. And Edith McGuire was also in the auditorium. And when she told the story about beating Edith, I was like, well, wow, I wonder how she feels about her, like taking her medal. And then, Edith waves from the back of the auditorium, and, she's beautiful and amazing and joyful, just like Wyomia. And they're best friends. And I'm like, I want to tell that story. Like, that's an interesting story. And so I texted Dave, and I was just like, why don't you write her book? And he texted me back, why don't you? And so he set up a phone call, and we talked on the phone, and we were both the kind of people that we did not want to commit to working with each other until we had met in person. And so Wyomia's down in LA, I'm up here in Oakland. So I said, well, I have a conference that I have to go to for work in April. Why don't we meet then? And we did. And it was just like, I mean, at least from my side, I feel like we hit it off immediately. To me, Wyomia's biggest concern, which she expressed to me on the phone, was worried that there wasn't going to be enough for a book. And so I made sure that I came to that meeting with chapter outlines. I researched everything I could find out about her, about the Tigerbelles, about Mr. Temple. And then I just, wrote out a schematic for the whole book. And then we started interviewing, like, not the next day, because I had too many meetings to go to at the conference, but on the Sunday following. And one of her friends was kind enough to let us use sort of the common room in her apartment building. And we were sitting there and we started, I don't know, maybe 9 in the morning, something like that, maybe a little earlier. And the friend was supposed to come in and interrupt us at 11. And I had a plane to catch at 3 or 4 or something that I remember. And I just started asking her questions. We just started talking. And, I finally got really hungry. Wyomia doesn't eat very much, but I need to eat all the time. And so I finally was like, look, I don't know about you, but I need some lunch. And it was 2:30 in the afternoon. We had been talking for over 5 hours. And so that was just the beginning. And then we did lots of interviews, and the press offered to have them transcribed for me, but I said, no, I want to transcribe them myself because I want Wyomia's voice in my head, like hard, because I want the book to sound like her. And then we met as often as we could and needed to do follow-up interviews, and for me to sort of put sort of the arc of each chapter in front of her and get her feedback. It's wonderful to collaborate with Wyomia, and the fact that the book feels full of joy fills me with joy, because that's what the experience was like writing it for me.
You took up all that information that I could say, but it was
Sorry.
definitely a joy to work with Elizabeth. And, one thing she said right off the bat, was that, hey, this is a story that has to be told. You got to have to tell the story. And I'm very happy that she did. And she somewhat insisted, but, encouraging me quite a bit to do that. And not only did I have a great co-writer, but I also have a great friend.
Yeah. One of the luckiest things that's ever happened to me was going to that.
Both of us, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think everyone here this evening can see this like great camaraderie that you all have too. And there's like almost a shorthand that's going on between the questions and the answers and things like that. So Wyomia, what's amazing, and at least in what I've researched and after reading Tigerbelles, is that there have really only been 3 women who have won the 100 back to back. You, Gail Devers, and Shelley Ann Fraser Price. And it's like, when you think of how everyone is so record obsessed and wanting to win and things like that, that just doesn't seem your spirit. You seem more just to be there as part of the experience, and that the medals were secondary. But I find it really amazing that in the entire history of the Olympic Games, there have only been 3 women who have accomplished what you did, and you were the first.
Well, yes, all of that, but it's 4 women because now,
4?
because yes, it's the 4, because the other, what's her name? Elaine. No, that Elaine, I think it is, that won the 100 meters. So it's 2 Jamaican women and 2 American women, and you would think if that had been a man, they would be talking about it forever and ever. We would be in every commercial and all those kinds of things, and I think if we were men, and it has a lot to do with us being Black, I feel. You're talking about 4 Black women, and I just look at it as they don't want to give that much kind of power to Black women, and I guess I can't speak for the other 3 people, but it was not so much that. It's just more that doing something that you enjoy, doing something that you like. And I always say it doesn't matter when they ever speak on the 100 meters, they really have to say my name, wouldn't they? Because of the and the fact that, it just, people just look at men as being always the strongest, the one that's supposed to do it. And then you think about Usain Bolt and how much publicity he's gotten about winning 3 times. But you have 4 women that have done back to back twice. That is something amazing, I think. I can't hear him.
Sorry,
Okay.
I hit the mute button at the same time I hit the Q&A button. So we do have a question from JP, who asks, I've always heard that the Women's Sports Foundation was founded by Billie Jean King, and I was pleasantly surprised to see that you were a founding member of this organization. How involved were you in the grassroots of this organization?
I was right there in the grassroots. It started, like I said, we were in, I think our competition was in Florida someplace, and we were just sitting around talking. And then it was a lot, it was more than the women that I was talking about that was there, but those are the people that got to talk a little bit more. Billie Jean King had the money, so to speak, because of her at the top of the track, because of tennis. And it started out in California, actually in Palo Alto, as a person that was also funding with help with the funding on even Oceanclaw. And there's another woman, gosh, I can't think of her name, it comes again, but they are the ones that were doing a lot of the work, lead work and getting people to sponsor, and making sure we could have the banquets and all those things and the dinners. And you know, we would like once a month it would happen. We would have meetings up in Palo Alto. So I mean, I have no problem with the fact that they say Billie Jean King, but we all know who it is, that we all started out. But they heard after Billie Jean King beat Bobby Riggs, then that just opened up the whole. I think everything, and people looked at it as she's doing this. She's the key behind it, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just another strong woman doing things.
Excellent. Well, we are getting close to the top of the hour, and just wanted to remind everybody that if you'd like to pick up a copy of Tigerbelle, that Brave and Kind is our local independent bookstore, who is our bookseller for this event. But wherever you are joining us from, please, please, please shop at your local independent bookstores. If they don't have it on the shelves, they can order it for you. And of course, we always tell everyone, and we encourage everyone to support our Black-owned independent bookstores and businesses across America. Let me see, we have one more question, and it's from Jennifer. Thanking you both for doing this book. And of course, you know, I would also like to thank you. This is a great bit of not only American history, but Georgia history. And, you know, I am so glad that we happened to find this book and to hear this wonderful story, and that we can share it with so many people now. And I would like, of course, to thank you, Elizabeth, for joining us this evening, and thank you, Wyomia, for joining us as well. We hope you all had a wonderful time with us here this evening. I would like to thank you for inviting us into your homes. There are so many other things that we could be doing right now with our lives and trying to get through this pandemic, but we are so very grateful that you chose to share your evening with us, talking about books and learning about other people and their amazing stories. So thank you once again from the Georgia Center for the Book. Elizabeth, Wyomia, thank you for joining us, and we will see you all again very, very soon. Have a wonderful night.